Thanks for joining us today. I'm Jeannine Kees. I'm a realtor from Orangeburg, South Carolina, and I serve as the NAR Federal Political Coordinator for Congressman James Clyburn.
Thank you, Jeannine. My name is Lyles, and I'm from Columbia, and I'm proud to serve as the president of the South Carolina Realtors this year. We're honored to have Congressman Jim Clyburn here and thank him for his leadership in Washington and his support of the real estate industry and home ownership.
Thanks, Morris. You know, May is the time of year that we all look forward to attending the NAR Legislative Meetings in our nation's capital. But due to the coronavirus, we're conducting these meetings virtually again. This is my favorite meeting actually in Washington, and I hate that we can't be together, but we do have the opportunity to share our discussion with the 26,000 realtors in our state. For our members who are watching, I hope that our conversation today inspires you to attend next year's meetings when, hopefully, we join Congressman Clyburn in Washington.
Absolutely, Jeannine. This is one of my favorite meetings also. And normally we have about 125 realtors from South Carolina that come up to DC. Now we get to share that experience with everyone via Zoom and the magic of the internet. But anyway, we know that the congressman is on a tight schedule, so let's go ahead and get started.
Okay. Congressman Clyburn, let me just say thanks for being with us today and thanks for everything that you do. And before we jump into our real estate questions, can you just say what give us a little update maybe on your family and what the last 12 months have been like for you?
Well, thank you very much, Jeannine. Thanks for having you here, Mr. President. Thank you so much for inviting me. You know, COVID-19 visited us right around the time, not long after both of us, Jean became widowed. And of course, I've never been much of a homebody, but I tell you what, I used to do breakfast for all my kids when we were growing up, but I've now gotten to know them much better as adults, and now doing breakfast, lunch, and I wouldn't call it dinner, but evening meal. I've learned how to do that. But basically, though I'm not getting any better, I'm playing more golf. At least the golf courses have been open around South Carolina. So I've been doing a lot of that. But my three daughters and I have really gotten to know each other very well. Mignon, maybe you know,
yes,
lives here in Washington, but
yeah, I know Jennifer the best, I think.
Yeah, I think you do know Jennifer much better than the rest. Jennifer has become the politician in the family, though I never thought she would be. And my youngest daughter, Angela, is now on the school board in Columbia.
Absolutely.
One of the elections that I asked her not to run, but she showed me. But Mignon has virtually moved back. Well, she hadn't moved back. She's been spending all her time there in Columbia, waiting out COVID-19. So we have really spent more time with each other in the last 7 or 8 months than we've spent since they were children. So I've gotten to know, I think we know each other much better, not that we are pleased with everything we've gotten to know.
Yes, sir. Well, that's the silver lining of it all. I know with our family too, we've been able to spend a lot of time with each other, and
Right.
and it's been nice. And well, Congressman, we'll go ahead and get started with some of these real estate questions. And you know, as the U.S. continues to recover from the pandemic, realtors are monitoring a number of issues that are impacting the nation's homeowners, real estate industry, the health of our mortgage market, and American consumers everywhere. There are about 9.5 million jobs in the real estate rental and leasing industry, and every 2 home sales generate 1 job in this country. The issues that matter to our industry matter to our nation, as I know you know, and they'll play a critical role in America's economic recovery.
Yeah, you're right, Morris. And throughout the pandemic, the residential real estate markets had a positive economic impact on homeowners, on communities, on the economy. I think they say real estate interest of some sort, or about 1/5 of our economy. However, we've had access to the residential real estate market very limited by this historic 50-year record shortage. So, Congressman, what's Congress doing to address this affordable housing shortage?
Well, thank you for that question. As you don't know, this I have a weekly QUIP meeting, and it's usually the morning of the day before getaway day. And since we're here until Friday, that meeting was this morning. When we go home on Thursdays, I have that meeting on Wednesday mornings. This morning, our special guest was Marcia Fudge, who, as you know, is the new Secretary of HUD. And we had a very extensive and I think very productive meeting dealing with the overall issue of the role that this administration expects for housing to play in this recovery. And when you hear the president talking about building back better, he doesn't use the word a lot, but he does with 2 words, big and bold. He used them sometimes, but it is all the time on his mind. Building back better, and it's bigger and bolder. And that's what they're doing when it comes to housing. There's a study I have here with me. I didn't know about the study until that meeting this morning. The new member from New Mexico brought this study up this morning, and I immediately had the staff to get it for me. A study done by Brandeis. I've just glanced at it, but this study seems to be saying that when it comes to things like closing the wealth gap, that housing has a greater impact than even education. And so I'm going to look at this study because I'm really going to look at what this administration is coming forward with. And I'm going to see whether or not we can really do a better job, not just of providing housing, but we've got to look at home ownership, building equity, building wealth, sustainable wealth, intergenerational wealth. Housing is going to be big with this administration, even bigger than I think they're currently planning. Because I'm going to be having meetings starting this afternoon with other members here, looking at what we can do with housing and applying some principles that we have applied in other areas, like tax certificates that we've done for communications, for radio station and television station ownership. I'm going to be looking at how we can use some of those principles when it comes to housing. So housing is going to be big in my activities going forward, because if this study bodes out what my glances indicate, I might be taking a harder look at housing than I've looked in the past.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, Congressman. And this feeds into that. What we've, recent studies have estimated that the U.S. has developed an underbuilding gap of about 5.5 million housing units over the last 20 years. And when you look at the numbers, it equates into a $4.4 trillion underinvestment in housing. I think after the 2008 crash, I think we saw a lot of pullback in building and developing, and even relatively modest steps that are taken now to reduce this gap would unleash tremendous economic activity and would create millions of new jobs. Realtors support the Bipartisan Housing Supply and Affordability Act and the Neighborhood Homes Investment Act. Can we count on you for your support of these bills?
Absolutely, absolutely. That to me sort of crystallizes what what I think is very, very important going forward.
Yes.
Marcia said something else this morning that you may be aware of. I wasn't. That I forgot what year she mentioned, 15, 20 years ago, I think it was, that HUD's was 8% of our federal budget. Today, she says, is 1%.
Oh.
1%. So all of these numbers, I think, are things that we got to take a hard look at and see why that is. Because, you know, I remember, you're probably too young, but I'm old enough to remember when HUD was created as a federal agency. And what HUD was supposed to be about. And it looks as if it's not about that anymore. Certainly if it's only 1% of the budget, it can't be what it was supposed to be.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, no question about that. There are two other issues that we're concerned about as realtors. And the first one that I'd like to mention is the 1031 exchange. We have found this to be a vital tool for liquidity, encouraging additional investment, helping small and minority-owned businesses expand and grow. And I think a lot of times people think, well, that's something, you know, just for the wealthy, et cetera. But I'll give you an example. You know, the industrial park that we have there at 26 and 301, that was put together, you know, with some like-kind exchanges, the 1031 program, because those were farmers that didn't, you know, weren't too interested in giving up their, you know, really good farmland. But the point is they could, you know, move, you know, into some other excellent farmland. So about 40% of the real estate like-kind exchanges tend to be with multifamily housing. And so even people like me, and I think Morris and some of the people we know, we use this a lot because where there's areas where there's not other incentives for the development of affordable housing, they use the 1031 exchange. One other thing that I learned just recently, Congressman, is that the 1031 exchange was first instigated and used in 1921. That's 100 years ago. And that's before both of us. So, you know, this is something, if it's been working for that long, we certainly want to, you know, look very carefully before we make any changes with that. Any comment you have about the 1031?
Not really. I'm just finding out what it is. Now, I know about that industrial park that you mentioned. And you know, that's not the only one. We got the Matthews Park.
Right.
And I'm not too sure I know exactly how they put all that together. I know what the plan is for those two parks out on the industrial parks out on the
right. And you know, sometimes when you try to put something together, you know, location is very important. And so with the economic development, you know, we wanted to have the prime location. But also when you do that, you know, how do you package that together? And
right.
One of the things that we worked with was with that. But I'll send some additional information. And I think NAR is putting together some other examples of 1031, how it, you know, it isn't like, it's not a tool of Wall Street. It's a tool that we use, you know.
Sure.
Yeah, here, yeah.
Well, I'd like to know more
in
about
Orangeburg
it.
County.
I'd like to know more about it to see whether or not it can be used for affordable housing.
Yeah, okay, and how that might work. I think 40%, as I said, in multifamily, but even single family too, but how we could incorporate that is important. Another thing that we're concerned about, and this really is personal, and that is the examination of the independent contractor status in the PRO Act. 87% of our 1.4 million realtors are classified as independent contractors. You know, I think there's a certain personality type. I'm thinking we like the greater freedom, we like the flexibility. we like to be entrepreneurs, you know what I'm saying? And Congress has chosen, as we're all federal regulations, as operating as independent contractors. And we're hoping that this status doesn't change. We sort of like where we are, and we think we're doing a good job, and most of us are mom and pops anyway. So any thought you have on that?
I know you. And I will keep you in mind as we have these discussions. I know that you all have some issues with the PRO Act.
Yeah.
And hopefully we keep the lines of communication open. And I can tell you the PRO Act has got support, but it's got detractors within my on my side of the aisle.
Right.
So
and there may be some reasons for the PRO Act, you know, for some other, but just keep the realtors in mind. And,
I will.
And me, okay.
I suspect.
I gotta keep working, Congressman.
I'm a good neighbor. I want to remain a good neighbor. And so Mars and his crowd up there in Columbia.
Don't put me in with the whole crowd up here. Congressman, don't put me in with the whole crowd up here.
No, I know everybody, it's sort of equate me with Columbia, and but I really, my official residence is really in Santee.
Yes, sir.
So that's where I vote and all that stuff, but I still come to Columbia, but I'm gonna stay a good neighbor. And if I'm good to Jeannine, I'll get by with you, Mars.
That sounds good. Always welcome. Well, Congressman Clyburn, you know, as stewards of the right to own, use, and transfer private property, our livelihoods and businesses as realtors depend upon an open housing market that's free from discrimination. Our economy, communities, and the American people suffer when discrimination and segregation artificially constrain homeownership and limit the intergenerational wealth that it builds. Yet more than 50 years after the passage of the Fair Housing Act, the homeownership rates for African Americans, Hispanics, and Asian Americans continues to lag behind that of white Americans. And I know I'm speaking to the choir, but also want to know if you have any ideas of what Congress can do to help this and work with this.
That's driving me more than anything else with this new approach I was telling you about. I don't know how we're going to do it, but I know we need to do it. And in fact, we are going to have to take these pressures off our social order. And the best way I know to take pressures off that social order, number one is a job. And number two is ownership. People just are better toward each other and themselves when ownership takes place. It can be home ownership, it can be even an automobile. I watch people sometimes and I think about watch them washing their cars and polishing their cars. It's about ownership. That's something that they own. And we've got to get to the point where we can do much more home ownership. I want to see people painting their houses and doing their landscaping and whatever. They aren't going to do that for rental units 9 times out of 10, but they'll do it
For their
home ownership.
Absolutely.
So home ownership to me is going to be very, very important. And that's basically what we said to Marshall Fudge this morning. Affordable housing has got to be much more than rental units. We got to go with home ownership. And I think that to make sure that these artificial barriers are not there. Now, we know the history.
Yes, sir.
And we just got to make sure that as we move forward, we put some of this history behind us and let it stay behind us. We can't change the history, but we can influence the future. And that's where we've got to be. Put that history behind us and see what we can do about influencing a much better future
Yes,
in the housing market and everywhere else.
I think NAR has instigated some special programs and training and so forth, because we want to do our part and we want to be trying to lead, with this. So I think you'll see us maybe being, more active in that area, although, throughout the country, and encouraging people to,
I look forward to
do a
that.
better job. So
Yeah, I think there's some real creative ideas, Jeannine, that I've heard that are coming, through NAR. And so definitely, Congressman, be on the lookout for that, because I
Okay,
think,
I will. I will.
it's going to be some
You
interesting.
be sure, Jeannine, to make me aware.
I will.
of
I
this.
will. Congressman, the administration recently introduced the American Families Plan, and as realtors, we appreciate the administration's efforts to lead us on a path to economic recovery. And I think, we're starting to see that. And also the recent proposals to address the infrastructure and transportation. And I definitely, with you, have to mention broadband, because still this year we're seeing school buses as hotspots in our, near where we live, so that our children can learn virtually during this COVID. So all of this, is important to us. And can you tell us how this is going to affect, maybe again, how the American Families Plan will, have an effect on home ownership?
Well, the American Families Plan is a bit separate from the American Jobs Plan. Now, the American Jobs Plan is a big infrastructure thing. Now, some of this, you might as well admit, it's going to get convoluted, simply because, you get different people supporting different parts of things. So I look for us to, though I'm not advocating this, I just think there's going to be some breakup of these things. I don't think you see this whole thing. In fact, Senator Coons, who has a seat that Joe Biden once had up there in Delaware, he was the first I heard to advocate for breaking the infrastructure plan up, or the jobs plan up. So I don't know exactly where we're going with this, but I'll tell you this, that especially in our part of the country, Jeannine, there's going to be a big significant step forward in infrastructure to broaden the definition of infrastructure, so as broadband will be a very critical part of it. Right now, we hear all the talk about everybody saying, well, we can agree on traditional infrastructure. Well, traditional can't be the future. That's what we're talking about here now. The future has got to go beyond what has been tradition. If we've had all this, these years of housing programs and support, and for home ownership to still be lagging among blacks and browns, that means something ain't working. Something's got to change going forward. And infrastructure's got to be the same way. It's one thing to have school buses as hotspots. I worked with Google several years ago when they were creating these hotspots on school buses. But when the kid gets off the school bus and gets to a house, that ain't a hotspot, and they ain't connected. What have we done? I often tell the story of my getting those laptops for Scotch Branch High School over there in Somerton some years ago. That I got Serena Williams, the tennis player, to donate these laptops to the school. I thought I was doing something and went to talk to the superintendent about what I had done. And I said, look here, I said, we're going to celebrate, because Serena's also going to give me 100 tickets for the Family Circle Cup. And we're going to take 90 students and 10 parents to their first professional tennis tournament. I want that to be part of the celebration. Well, the superintendent looked at me like I was crazy. And I couldn't understand the look she was giving me. And when I inquired, she said, well, when you give us these laptops, what are we going to do with them? I said, well, put them in the library and let them check the laptops out like they check out books. I said, okay. And when they get home with the laptop, what are they going to do with that? They ain't connected. So,
Nothing, no internet.
Terrible.
Yes.
yeah. So these are the kinds of things that we got. This is sometimes you have to, when you ain't living it. I'm talking with my granddaughter just several weeks before that happened, who at 4:30 in the afternoon, I'm talking to her, asking her about homework. She said, well, I don't have the assignment yet. They'll come in around 5 o'clock. She's getting her class there at Northeast High, was it Richmond Northeast?
Richmond Northeast, yes, sir.
Getting their homework assignment via the internet. And here I'm talking about children in my district that can't even do anything because they don't have any internet.
Mhm.
So these are the kinds of things we're going to have to work on going forward. So I want broadband to be a part of infrastructure. I want infrastructure to be an integral part of everything we do going forward. It can be housing, school construction. Not far from us, and over there in Bamberg,
Right.
what's going on with schools over there. These are the kinds of things that we're going to be doing with this American Families Act. So it's going to get all mixed up, except that that one of the things we're doing that people have got some problems with, what the president is proposing, we've done it with this act, the Rescue Act.
Mhm.
We did, I think, a year for the child tax credit. Now, that tax credit, we got to make that permanent. That's going to be a big number, but we got to make that permanent because they've already told us that alone, with half of the children living in poverty, will be out of poverty if we make that permanent.
Wow.
That's the kind of stuff that we got to do. So all of that will benefit home ownership, with a benefit. I'm telling you, these things are there. It may not look like it, but you stabilize families, get these children out of poverty, and the record will show that they'll be better prepared for home ownership than they'll be for renting an apartment somewhere.
Yes, sir. No, that absolutely. Well, thank you, Congressman. One last question, sort of on a different note. We talked about being at home for 12 months. Were there any hobbies or pastimes that you picked up? I know you played some more golf. Anything else that you did over those 12 months that you enjoyed and maybe picked up a new hobby or new skill?
No, I didn't pick up a new hobby, but I really spent more time with my daughters, and a little more time with grandchildren. I really found out that I did not know Angela, my youngest,
Mm-hmm.
as well as I thought I did. Because I was joking about her running for the school board.
Yes, sir.
When she told me she wanted to run for the school board, because I discouraged her, and I said to her, I said, Angela, I said, you're going to pick up a lot of my friends, but I got some detractors out there too. They ain't going to be too kind to you.
Yes, sir.
And she said, well, this is something I always wanted to do, and I think I can do this. I said, well, if you do it, I'll try to be helpful. And I watched her run that campaign. And I just sat there. I didn't take anything to do with it. She did come to me in the last waning days and says, I'd like to have you do a radio, so I want us to do a radio spot.
Mm-hmm.
And we did.
Mm-hmm.
Watching her run that campaign, it was very eye-opening to me. And if I had not been home with her every day and watching it, I wouldn't have known it. If we were still coming up here and still running around the district, I never would have seen in her what I saw.
Yes,
so I
sir.
think I got to know my children a little better. And that's not a bad hobby to have.
That's not a bad hobby at all. That's fantastic. That's a
real
great
blessing.
thing to say. Yeah, a
Absolutely.
blessing. Absolutely. Well,
By
I
the
hate
way,
to-
as you know, Morris,
Yes, sir.
not only did she win the race, but she led the ticket.
She
got
beat
one
everybody handily. No, sir, she did. And my daughters are both at Brendan Elementary, and we're glad to have her as a
Well,
part of Richland One. And
right.
you know, she is already shown to be a great leader there, and look
Right.
forward to seeing her on that board. Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, Congressman. We
Okay.
really appreciate it.
Thank
And
you.
on behalf of our 26,000 realtors, we just can't wait for next year to be able to see you in person. And not all 26,000 at once, but but we do look forward to coming to DC and visiting like we normally do in your office.
Very good. Look forward to that. And Jeannine, I play with a lot of Carolina and Clemson logo balls. So if you see any of them in your backyard, save them for me.
I've got a whole bucket full, so when you're out here next time, you can go through and pick the ones that aren't cut up.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Big
Congressman.
Congressman.
All right.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.